better have been recording. Okay, good.
Hi, I'm Danny, the Rag Doll Pharmacist. Happy Myasthenia Gravis Awareness Month. I've been having a flare of my stomach issues lately and was recently sent home from the hospital on total parenteral nutrition, or TPN. The ironic thing is that I used to be a board-certified TPN pharmacist. Although I'm disabled now, I can use my skills at home to help take care of myself. I know how stressful it can be to come home from the hospital with brand new instructions on how to manage your TPN. So I thought I'd make this video to share with you how I start my TPN. Come join me. But please keep in mind that none of the following is meant to be medical advice. Follow the instructions you were given by your care team. And if you have questions about your TPN therapy, you should ask your doctor. All right, let's go.
All right, so I've washed my hands. So I've got my TPN bag, my CAD pump, and my vials of vitamin that I'm going to need to inject into the bag. Reason being that they are not stable for terribly long, especially in the mixture. So we want to get them to our cells as fresh as possible. So the first thing I'm going to do is grab the rest of my supplies, which is going to be the CAD pump administration set, a couple needles, a flush. Here's a tip. The packages of things are, generally speaking, sterile inside the package. So as long as you keep them secured and you don't let them touch anything, they will remain, for our purposes, sterile. All right, so I'm just gonna get everything open without touching it here, because I want to keep it as clean as possible. Then I'm going to put my gloves on. You gotta try to put your gloves on without touching the outsides of them as much as possible. And then I'm going to sterilize them with some hand gel. I've also got plenty of alcohol swabs here, and we're gonna get started. So first things first is to add the vitamins to the TPN bag. You'll notice the TPN bag has 3 ports. One is for injecting things into, one is for spiking the bag to start the administration. The port where the pharmacy has injected all of the goodies into the bag, you'll notice sometimes they'll put this to seal it, to show that they're finished with it. But we gotta use this, so I'm gonna get rid of that. I'm gonna make sure that I have the actual needle attached to the syringe. Sometimes it can be a little loose, so just wanna tighten that on. Sometimes they come attached, sometimes they come separate pieces and you gotta attach them. Then the next thing I'm gonna do is that each vial here is 5 cc's or 5 milliliters. So I'm gonna pull back 5 milliliters of air. And that'll make it easier for me to get the vitamins out of their vials. And I'll show you what I'm talking about in a little bit. All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and open vial 1 and vial 2. And I'm gonna swab off the tops of them. I'm using the front and back of this swab. And then I'm gonna do the same thing to the injection part. Now when you inject your needle into the vial and into the TPN, you're gonna wanna make sure that the pointed end of the needle goes first, and then you sort of shove the rubber out of the way before plunging the needle in. You don't just go straight down, because that can cause something called coring, where this little rubber port to the vial, you could actually carve out a tiny little piece of that, and that can end up in your TPN mix, so you don't want that. So I'm gonna very carefully, just like that.
All right, if you're worried with my talk of coring, or you're unsure about your syringe technique, feel free to contact your nurse or doctor. But also rest assured that the filter in the infusion line is there to help catch any stray particles from entering the bloodstream.
I'm gonna squeeze the air into it, and then I don't even have to pull back on the plunger. It just comes flowing up. Now I'm gonna squeeze it a little bit more to get the air completely out of there. And then I'm gonna make sure that I draw up my 5 milliliters. All right. And you wanna try to avoid pulling up air. There's a few bubbles in here, but it shouldn't be any problem. And I'm gonna remember to use that same technique for getting into the TPN bag. There we go. Look at that. I love that. That's like my favorite part of this, was that bright yellow color. I'm gonna put my cap back on the needle by scooping the needle through the cap. That way I don't get poked. Lovely. We're gonna set that aside. That goes in the special trash because it is a sharp, so you will need a sharps container. Same thing with vial 2. The vials, you'll notice, have a little bit more than 5 milliliters in them, and that's okay. They just call it overfill. That's just to make sure that you don't get gypped. All right, and that you have plenty to work with. But 5 milliliters of each is the actual dose that we want. I'm gonna scoop that cap back on, set that aside, and then gently rotate the bag. Gently, because you don't want to, cause a bunch of frothing and bubbles in here. We just want to get everything as mixed together as we can. And as time goes on, it'll mix itself even more. On to the administration set. We're gonna remove these and sort of unwrap this puppy. The instructions will say close the clamp on the tubing. That's actually a pretty important step. The spike is covered with a cap so that again it remains sterile. And we're gonna remove this blue cartridge, right? And we're going to spike the TPN. So we've got to remove the hub on the spiking port just by twisting. Easy. Take the cap off of the spike itself and just jam it in there real good. Excellent. Now we're gonna prepare a pump. You turn the pump on first. Then it'll realize once you've attached the infusion set, and it will give you the option to prime. So there's two little hooks here that go on the left side of the pump, and these two little metallic spots. You're gonna hook those on first, and then just open this latch here and press down. And close the latch, and it automatically says prime tubing. Before I hit yes, I'm going to unclamp and also loosen up the cap at the end so that air can get through it. So I'm gonna hit yes, prime tubing. Now it'll remind you, disconnect tubing from the patient, open clamps, then press prime. All right. The funny thing is that as this is priming, we wanna have the pump on its side. And I'll tell you why. And the point of priming is to get rid of all of the air and air bubbles in our tubing set, administration set. So as it fills, we want the air to go out ahead and for there not to be any bubbles that get stuck in the tubing. So since it comes this way, that's why you put the pump on that side so that it pushes the air before it and you don't get any air bubbles stuck inside. I'm gonna keep an eye on what level the TPN fluid is at, because when I get to the filter, this is another spot where bubbles can get trapped and accumulate and end up going into you later, which you want to avoid. So the arrow shows you the direction that the fluid is running in from the pump. I want to make sure the arrow is up while the pump is filling, priming. I want to make sure the arrow is up so that the fluid fills from bottom to the top and all those air bubbles go with it. I always get a few bubbles here too. If you do get bubbles in it, just, it's okay. Just let the TPN run out a little bit. It's a good thing I've got my polyback towel here. Also call them diapers. All right. So now we are primed and ready to go. It'll tell you the amount of fluid that you have primed, and it'll ask you if you want to continue priming. No, I don't. I think I'm good. Now it'll ask start pump. So I'm actually gonna put a pause on that. Now before I get myself ready to hook up to the TPN, I want to put it in my bag. I've got this really cute bag here from Chronically Fit that I love. You might have been giving one of the standard black bags, but either way, right now with the cap still on the tip of the TPN infusion set, I'm going to go ahead and put this puppy in my bag and arrange all the tubing just so, because once I hook it up to myself, it's too late. You can't run the tubing through any holes if you're trying to keep it inconspicuous. So I also actually want to put the pump in a different compartment. So I'm just gonna detach and reattach it. There's no problem with doing that. Okay. And then I'm gonna make sure I run the tubing through the hole in the back of my backpack. You can keep the clamp closed while you're doing this so that you don't get TPN all over your bag. I'm going to get myself ready. I have a port, So I'm just gonna go ahead and get the port set. I'm going to attach my flush. It's just a normal saline flush. The flushes do come with a little bit of air in them, which we, again, want to avoid injecting into ourselves. So I like to give them a little tap to get all the air to go to the top. And then I just like to loosen the cap. And here's a pro tip for you. It's easiest to get rid of that air by pulling back a tiny bit on the plunger so that you loosen up that stopper inside, and then it's really easy to, in a controlled way, move the air out. Removing my little Kuros cap here, and scrubbing the injection cap for 15 seconds. Okay. And I'm just gonna attach the flush, righty-tighty. And using the push-pause method, where you push, pause, I'm gonna make sure that this is flushing well. And once that's flushed through, I can attach the TPN. Just attach that there. Make sure I've opened all my clamps. And on my pump, it says start pump. I'm gonna hit yes. Infusion is now running. And we're done.
That's it. I'm off. Thanks for joining me. And if you like the music in my video, check out my music page, Danny A. Quill. Thanks.